Atlanta, Georgia, 11:47 p.m. The rain hammered against the tall windows of Belmont's, one of Atlanta's most exclusive restaurants, where white tablecloths gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and the wealthy came to be seen. But in the back corner, near the swinging kitchen doors, no one ever looked twice. That's where Lorraine Davis worked. She was 32 years old, but her shoulders carried the weight of someone much older. Her black uniform hung loose on her thin frame, and her hands, calloused and scarred from years of scrubbing floors, moved quickly and silently as she wiped down tables. She had perfected the art of being invisible. That was her survival skill in a place like this. Lorraine had been working at Belmont's for 4 years. She cleaned tables, swept floors, polished silverware, and did everything the other staff refused to do. She never complained. She never asked for more hours. She just showed up, did her job, and went home to her small studio apartment in East Atlanta, where the pipes leaked and the heater barely worked. Tonight, the restaurant was closing late because of a private event. The last guests were leaving, their laughter echoing through the marble hallway as they headed toward their luxury cars parked outside. Lorraine stayed in the shadows, waiting for them to leave so she could finish cleaning. But then the door opened one more time. A young man walked in, mid-30s, sharply dressed in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Lorraine made in 6 months. His dark hair was slicked back, his jawline sharp, his movements precise and deliberate. He didn't smile. He didn't acknowledge the host who greeted him. He simply walked past everyone as if they were furniture. Marcus Ashford. Lorraine recognized him immediately. Everyone in Atlanta knew the Ashford name. The family owned half the city's real estate, had stakes in tech companies, and their name was engraved on hospital wings and university buildings. Marcus was the youngest son, brilliant, ruthless, and known for treating people like chess pieces. He sat alone at a corner table, the same table Lorraine had just finished cleaning. He ordered quickly, filet mignon, rare, a bottle of expensive French wine, and then he pulled out his phone, completely detached from the world around him. Lorraine kept her distance. She had learned over the years that wealthy people didn't like to be reminded that the help existed, but she watched him from the corner of her eye, something about his presence making her uneasy. An hour passed. Marcus finished his meal without speaking to anyone. He didn't thank the server who brought his food. He didn't look up when the chef himself came out to ask how everything was. He just sat there, cold and unreachable, like a statue made of ice. Finally, he stood up, threw his napkin on the table, and walked toward the exit without a word. The server who had taken care of his table, a young woman named Jenna, rushed over to check. Her face fell immediately. "No tip," she whispered, staring at the empty receipt. "Not even $1. The manager, Mr. Caldwell, walked over and glanced at the bill. His expression hardened. 340 meal, 0 tip, typical Ashford behavior. Lorraine said nothing. She had seen this before. People like Marcus Ashford didn't believe in gratitude. They believed in power. "Lorraine, clean table 7, Mr. Caldwell ordered sharply, already moving on to close out the register. She nodded silently, grabbed her cleaning supplies, and walked toward Marcus Ashford's table. The rain outside was getting heavier, drumming against the glass like a warning. As she began wiping down the table, she noticed the leather booth cushion was slightly lifted, as if something had been pushed underneath it. Probably just a forgotten napkin. But when she lifted the cushion, her breath caught. There was an envelope. It was cream-colored, thick, expensive paper, the kind used for formal invitations or legal documents. And written on the front, in elegant black ink, was a single name, Lorraine Davis. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her hands started shaking. How did he know her name? She glanced around the restaurant. Mr. Caldwell was in the back office. Jenna was counting her tips at the bar. No one was watching. Slowly, carefully, Lorraine picked up the envelope. It was heavier than she expected, sealed with red wax that bore an embossed crest, a lion holding a shield. She shouldn't open it. She knew that. But something in her chest was screaming at her to look inside. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was hurried, almost frantic, as if written in desperation. "Lorraine, if you're reading this, then you found what I couldn't say out loud. I know you don't know me. I know you think I'm just another entitled rich man who treated you like you don't exist, and you're right. I did. But not because I wanted to. There are people watching me. Every move, every word. They have eyes everywhere, even here. I couldn't acknowledge you tonight because if they knew I saw you, if they knew I recognized you, they would hurt you. Or worse, You need to know the truth. About me. About your mother. About why you were really left at St. Mary's Orphanage 28 years ago. Your mother didn't abandon you. She was silenced. And the people who did it are still out there. They're powerful. They're dangerous. And they're about to come for you because you're the last piece of evidence they can't erase. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the way I acted tonight. I'm sorry for what's about to happen, but you deserve the truth even if it destroys everything. Trust no one, especially not the men in the black suits. M.A. Lorraine's vision blurred. Her hands were shaking so violently she almost dropped the letter. Your mother didn't abandon you. She had spent her entire life believing she was unwanted, thrown away, forgotten. She had no memories of her mother, no photographs, no stories, just the cold gray walls of St. Mary's Orphanage where she grew up until she aged out at 18. And now this stranger, this arrogant millionaire, was telling her that everything she believed was a lie. Before she could process what she had just read, the front door of the restaurant burst open. Two men stepped inside. They were both wearing black suits, crisp white shirts, and dark sunglasses, even though it was almost midnight. Their faces were blank, emotionless like they were carved from stone, and they were looking directly at her. Lorraine's blood turned to ice. One of them spoke, his voice low and mechanical. "Lorraine Davis, we need you to come with us." Lorraine's heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The two men in black suits stood motionless at the entrance of Bellamont's, their faces expressionless, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses that reflected the chandelier light like mirrors. "Lorraine Davis," the taller one repeated, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "We need you to come with us. Now." Her first instinct was to run, her legs tensed, her body preparing to bolt toward the kitchen, toward the back exit, toward anywhere that wasn't here, but her feet wouldn't move. It was as if the weight of the letter in her hand had turned her body to stone. Mr. Caldwell emerged from the back office, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm when he saw the two men. "Excuse me, gentlemen, we're closed. You'll need to—" "This doesn't concern you," the shorter man said without looking at him. His voice was cold, mechanical, like he was reading from a script. "We're here for Ms. Davis." Jenna, the server, had stopped counting her tips. She was staring at Lorraine with wide, frightened eyes. "Lorraine, do you know these people?" Lorraine's throat was so tight she could barely breathe. No, I don't know who they are." The taller man took a step forward. "Ms. Davis, this can be easy or difficult. The choice is yours, but you will come with us." Something inside Lorraine snapped. 4 years of being invisible, 4 years of being silent, 4 years of letting people walk all over her because she had nowhere else to go, no one to protect her, nothing to lose. But now, holding this letter, this impossible, terrifying letter that claimed her entire life was built on a lie, something shifted. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice stronger than she expected. "Show me some identification. Tell me why you're here." The two men exchanged a glance. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Lorraine saw it. They hadn't expected her to challenge them. The taller man reached into his jacket. Lorraine flinched, half expecting him to pull out a weapon, but instead he produced a black leather wallet and flipped it open, revealing a badge. "Federal Security Division," he said. "We're investigating a matter of national security. You're a person of interest." Lorraine's mind was spinning. National security? She was a cleaning lady who could barely pay her rent. What could she possibly have to do with national security? "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I haven't done anything wrong. I work here. I clean tables. I go home. That's it. We're not accusing you of anything," the shorter man said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But you were in contact with Marcus Ashford tonight. We need to ask you some questions." The name hit her like a punch to the stomach. Marcus Ashford. The letter was still clutched in her hand, hidden against her leg. They didn't know she had it. They couldn't know. "I wasn't in contact with him," Lorraine said quickly, forcing herself to sound calm. "He sat at a table. I cleaned it. That's all. I didn't even speak to him." "Did he give you anything?" the taller man asked, his eyes, hidden behind those dark glasses, boring into her. "A note? A package? Anything at all?" Lorraine's pulse was racing. Every instinct told her to lie, to protect herself, to hand over the letter and let these men take it away so she could go back to her invisible, safe, miserable life. But something in Marcus Ashford's words kept echoing in her mind. Trust no one, especially not the men in the black suits. No, she said, meeting the man's gaze even though she couldn't see his eyes. He didn't give me anything. He didn't even look at me. The silence that followed was suffocating. The two men stood perfectly still like predators deciding whether to pounce. Finally, the shorter man spoke. "We'll need you to come to our office for questioning. Standard procedure." "Am I under arrest?" Lorraine asked. "Not yet." The words hung in the air like a threat. Mr. Caldwell stepped forward, his face red with indignation. "Now wait just a minute. You can't just come in here and—" "Yes, we can," the taller man said, cutting him off. "Unless you'd like to be charged with obstruction." Lorraine's mind was racing. If she went with them, they would search her, they would find the letter, and whatever Marcus Ashford was trying to protect her from would come crashing down on her head. But if she refused, they would arrest her. And then what? She needed time. Time to think. Time to figure out what the hell was happening. "I'll come with you," she said quietly. "But I need to get my coat from the back. And my purse." The two men exchanged another glance. The taller one nodded. "Make it quick." Lorraine turned and walked toward the kitchen, her legs trembling so badly she thought she might collapse. She could feel their eyes on her back, watching her every move. The moment she pushed through the swinging kitchen doors, she broke into a sprint. The kitchen was empty. The cooks had already left for the night. Stainless steel counters gleamed under fluorescent lights. The smell of grease and spices still hung in the air. Lorraine's locker was at the back, near the dishwashing station. She fumbled with the combination lock, her hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to open it. She grabbed her coat and her worn canvas bag, then looked down at the letter still clutched in her hand. She couldn't take it with her. They would search her. They would find it. But she couldn't leave it here either. Someone would throw it away. Or worse, someone would read it. Her eyes scanned the kitchen frantically. The walk-in freezer, the storage closet, the industrial oven. Then she saw it. The gap between the industrial dishwasher and the wall. It was narrow, barely a few inches wide, filled with dust and grime that no one had cleaned in years. Lorraine crouched down, folded the letter as small as she could, and shoved it deep into the gap, pushing it back until her fingers couldn't reach it anymore. She stood up, her heart pounding, just as the kitchen door swung open. The taller man stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Problem?" "No," Lorraine said, slipping her coat on. "Just getting my things." He watched her for a long moment as if trying to decide whether she was telling the truth. Then he stepped aside. "Let's go." The black sedan was parked outside, engine running, windshield wipers slashing back and forth against the relentless rain. Lorraine climbed into the back seat, sandwiched between the two men in suits. The interior smelled like leather and cigarettes. Neither man spoke. The driver, a third man she hadn't seen before, pulled away from the curb and merged into the empty Atlanta streets. Lorraine stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Neon signs reflected off wet pavement. Homeless people huddled under awnings. The world kept moving, oblivious to the fact that her life had just been torn apart. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Downtown," the shorter man said. "Federal building." Lorraine's stomach twisted. She had no idea what she was walking into. No idea what questions they were going to ask. No idea how to protect herself. "Your mother didn't abandon you." She was silenced. The words burned in her mind like a brand. All her life, she had believed she was nobody. A mistake. A burden someone had thrown away at the steps of an orphanage. She had built her entire identity around that pain, that rejection, that emptiness. And now Marcus Ashford, a man she had never spoken to, was telling her it was all a lie. But why? Why would he care? Why would he risk leaving her that letter? And what did he mean when he said she was the last piece of evidence? The car turned onto a dark side street, away from the main roads. Lorraine's pulse spiked. "This isn't the way downtown," she said, her voice tight. The driver didn't respond. The two men beside her remained perfectly still. Panic flooded through her. "Where are you taking me?" The shorter man finally turned to look at her. For the first time, he removed his sunglasses. His eyes were pale blue, cold and utterly devoid of warmth. "We're taking you somewhere you can answer our questions without interruption." Lorraine's blood turned to ice. "You're not federal agents." The man smiled. It was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. "No," he said quietly. "We're not." The car accelerated, plunging deeper into the darkness of Atlanta's industrial district, and Lorraine realized with absolute, bone-chilling certainty that she had just made the worst mistake of her life. The sedan sped through the industrial district of Atlanta, where abandoned warehouses loomed like concrete tombstones against the night sky. The rain was coming down harder now, turning the cracked pavement into rivers of black water. Streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for the car as it passed. Lorraine's heart was hammering against her ribs. Her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her fingernails were digging into her palms. She could feel the heat radiating off the two men on either side of her, one smiling that terrible cold smile, the other staring straight ahead as if she didn't exist. "What do you want from me?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. The man with the pale blue eyes, the one who had smiled, leaned back in his seat, completely relaxed, as if they were just having a casual conversation. "We want what Marcus Ashford gave you." "He didn't give me anything," Lorraine said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I already told you." "You're lying." His voice was soft, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "We know he left something for you. A letter, an envelope, something." Lorraine's mind raced. How did they know? Had they been watching Marcus? Watching her? Had they seen him hide the envelope under the cushion? "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. The man studied her for a long moment, his pale eyes searching her face like he was reading a book. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. Lorraine flinched, her body tensing for whatever was coming. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a photograph. It was old, faded, the edges worn from being handled too many times. He held it up so she could see it in the dim light of the car. Lorraine's breath caught in her throat. The woman in the photograph was young, maybe 25, with dark skin and bright, intelligent eyes. She was smiling, standing in front of what looked like a university building, wearing a graduation cap and gown. She looked exactly like Lorraine. "Do you know who this is?" the man asked softly. Lorraine couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up. Her entire body felt like it was made of glass, about to shatter into 1,000 pieces. "Her name was Dr. Evelyn Davis," the man continued, his voice steady and clinical. "Brilliant biochemist. Top of her class at Emory University. She was working on groundbreaking research for Ashford Biotech, research worth billions of dollars." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And she was your mother." The world tilted. Lorraine felt like she was falling even though she was sitting perfectly still. Her mother. Her mother had a name, a face, a life. Dr. Evelyn Davis. "What happened to her?" Lorraine whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. The man's expression didn't change. "She discovered something she wasn't supposed to. And when she tried to expose it, she became a liability." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your mother didn't die in a car accident like the official records claim. She was eliminated, quietly, efficiently, and you, a newborn baby, were placed in an orphanage with no records, no family, no identity. You were meant to disappear." Lorraine felt like she couldn't breathe. Everything she had ever believed about herself was crumbling. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Marcus Ashford is trying to finish what your mother started, and he's using you to do it." The man leaned closer, his pale eyes boring into hers. "Whatever he gave you tonight, that letter, that envelope, it contains evidence. Evidence that could destroy one of the most powerful families in America. Evidence that we've spent 28 years trying to bury." "We?" Lorraine asked, her voice trembling. "Who are you people?" The man smiled again, that cold, terrible smile. "We're the ones who clean up messes. And right now, Ms. Davis, you're a very big mess." The car turned sharply, pulling into an abandoned warehouse complex. The driver killed the engine, and suddenly everything was silent, except for the rain drumming on the roof. Lorraine's survival instincts kicked in. She had grown up in a rough neighborhood. She had learned early on how to read danger, and every cell in her body was screaming at her to run. "Get out," the taller man said, opening his door. Lorraine didn't move. "What are you going to do to me?" "That depends on you," the pale-eyed man said. "Tell us where the letter is and we'll make this quick. Painless. You'll just disappear, like your mother did. And if I don't tell you," his smile widened, "then we'll make it slow." The door beside her opened. Cold rain lashed against her face. The taller man grabbed her arm, his grip like iron, and yanked her out of the car. Lorraine stumbled on the wet pavement, her shoes slipping in a puddle. The warehouse loomed above them, its broken windows like hollow eyes staring down at the scene. She had to think, had to find a way out. "Inside," the pale-eyed man ordered, gesturing toward a rusted metal door. Lorraine's legs felt like they were made of lead, but she forced herself to walk. The taller man kept his hand clamped on her arm, steering her toward the entrance. The door creaked open. Inside the warehouse was a vast, empty space filled with shadows. Old machinery sat rusting in corners. Puddles of water dotted the concrete floor, reflecting the sparse light filtering in from the street lamps outside. In the center of the warehouse, someone had set up a metal chair. Just one chair, sitting alone in the middle of all that emptiness. Lorraine's stomach dropped. "Sit," the pale-eyed man said. "No." The word came out before she could stop it. He raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Lorraine planted her feet even though her legs were shaking. "You're going to kill me anyway, whether I tell you or not. So I'm not going to make it easy for you." For the first time, something flickered in the man's cold eyes. Not anger, not frustration. Something closer to respect. "You're braver than your mother," he said quietly. She begged at the end. White-hot rage flooded through Lorraine. She didn't think. She just acted. She drove her elbow back into the taller man's stomach as hard as she could. He grunted in surprise, his grip loosening just enough. Lorraine twisted free and ran. Her feet pounded against the concrete floor, splashing through puddles, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She could hear them behind her shouting, footsteps echoing through the warehouse. There had to be another exit. There had to be. She rounded a corner, nearly slipping on a patch of oil, and saw it. A loading dock at the back of the warehouse. The metal door partially open. Rain pouring through the gap. Lorraine threw herself at the door, shoving it open with her shoulder. The cold night air hit her like a wall. She was outside, in an alley filled with overflowing dumpsters and broken pallets. She ran. Behind her, she heard the warehouse door crash open. "Stop her!" Lorraine's lungs were burning. Her muscles screamed. But she kept running, her feet slapping against the wet pavement, the rain soaking through her coat. She burst out of the alley onto a main street. Cars whooshed past, their headlights blinding. She looked around wildly, trying to orient herself. A city bus was pulling away from a stop 50 feet ahead. Lorraine sprinted toward it, waving her arms. "Wait, please!" The bus driver saw her in his mirror. The brake lights flared. The bus stopped. Lorraine practically threw herself up the steps, fumbling in her pocket for change. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the coins. "You all right, honey?" the driver asked, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes. "I'm fine," Lorraine gasped. I need to get away from here." The driver looked past her, out the window. Lorraine followed her gaze. The two men in black suits were standing at the corner, watching the bus. The pale-eyed man pulled out his phone. "Sit down, baby," the driver said quietly, closing the doors. "Hold on tight." The bus pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic. Lorraine collapsed into a seat near the back, her entire body trembling. She watched through the rain-streaked window as the two men grew smaller and smaller until they disappeared into the night. But she knew it wasn't over. They would find her. They had resources, connections, power. She was just a cleaning lady with no money, no friends, no one to turn to. Except Marcus Ashford. He had left her that letter. He had tried to warn her. He knew what was happening. He knew who these people were, and if what they said was true. If he was trying to finish what her mother started, then he was her only chance at survival. Lorraine closed her eyes. Her mother's face from the photograph burned into her memory. Dr. Evelyn Davis, brilliant biochemist, murdered for knowing too much, and now they wanted to do the same to her daughter. The bus rumbled through the rain-soaked streets of Atlanta, carrying Lorraine toward an uncertain future. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know how she would find Marcus Ashford, didn't know if she would survive the night. But one thing was crystal clear. Her life as an invisible cleaning lady was over. Now she was hunting for the truth, and the truth she was beginning to realize was buried in blood. The bus dropped Lorraine off in Midtown Atlanta at 2:17 a.m. The rain had softened to a drizzle, but the streets were still slick and shining under the glow of street lamps. A few scattered groups of people stumbled out of bars, their laughter echoing off the buildings. Homeless people slept in doorways covered with cardboard and plastic tarps. Lorraine stood on the corner soaking wet, shivering with nowhere to go. She couldn't go home. They knew where she lived. They had found her at work. They probably knew everything about her. Her tiny studio apartment with the leaking pipes and the broken heater would be the first place they'd look. She couldn't go to the police. Those men had carried federal badges. Real or fake, it didn't matter. They had the kind of power that made regular cops look the other way. And what would she even say? "I'm being hunted by people who killed my mother 28 years ago." They'd think she was insane. She needed to find Marcus Ashford. He was the only person who knew what was really happening. the only person who could help her make sense of this nightmare. But how? She didn't have his phone number. She didn't know where he lived. She knew the Ashford family owned properties all over Atlanta, but she couldn't just show up at a mansion and demand to see him. Then she remembered something. The letter, the envelope. It was still hidden in the restaurant, shoved behind the industrial dishwasher where she'd left it. And inside that envelope might be answers, addresses, phone numbers, evidence, something that could help her. She had to go back. Lorraine checked her watch. 2:23 a.m. Bellamont's would be closed, locked up tight. But she still had her key, the back entrance key that all the cleaning staff used to get in early for their shifts. It was risky, dangerous. If those men were smart, they'd be watching the restaurant. But she didn't have a choice. Lorraine pulled her coat tighter and started walking. Bellamont's was about 20 blocks away, too far to walk safely at this hour, but she didn't have money for another bus. She had exactly $14, $32 in her purse, and a debit card connected to a bank account that held maybe $87 if she was lucky. She stuck to well-lit streets, avoiding alleys and dark corners. Every car that passed made her flinch. Every shadow looked like someone waiting to grab her. By the time she reached Bellamont's, her feet were throbbing and her clothes were soaked through. The restaurant sat on a quiet corner, dark and silent. The elegant facade, white stone columns, gold lettering, tall windows, looked almost ghostly in the dim streetlight. Lorraine circled around to the back alley where the delivery trucks came. The service entrance was a plain metal door, painted gray, with a rusted keypad lock that had stopped working years ago. The staff just used physical keys. Her hands shook as she pulled out her keyring. She glanced over her shoulder. The alley was empty except for a dumpster and a few scattered trash bags. The key slid into the lock. The door opened with a soft click. Lorraine slipped inside and closed the door behind her, her heart pounding. The back hallway was pitch black. She felt along the wall until she found the light switch, but she didn't turn it on. Too risky. Someone passing by might see the light and investigate. Instead, she pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The narrow beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the hallway that led to the kitchen. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. Stainless steel counters gleaming, industrial ovens silent and cold, the smell of cleaning chemicals hanging in the air. Lorraine moved quickly toward the dishwashing station at the back. The industrial dishwasher sat against the wall like a metal giant, its stainless steel surface reflecting her phone's light. She dropped to her knees and squeezed her hand into the narrow gap between the machine and the wall. Her fingers scraped against grime and dust and something sticky she didn't want to think about. There, she felt the edge of the folded paper. She tried to pinch it between two fingers, but it was wedged too tightly. She pushed her hand deeper, ignoring the pain as the metal edge scraped her wrist. Finally, her fingers closed around the letter. She pulled it out, her hand covered in gray dust and cobwebs. But she had it. Lorraine stood up, wiping her hand on her coat, and unfolded the letter. She'd only read the first few lines before those men had shown up. Now, in the darkness of the empty restaurant, she read the rest. Lorraine, if you're reading this, then you found what I couldn't say out loud. I know you don't know me. I know you think I'm just another entitled rich man who treated you like you don't exist. And you're right, I did. But not because I wanted to. There are people watching me. Every move, every word. They have eyes everywhere, even here. I couldn't acknowledge you tonight because if they knew I saw you, if they knew I recognized you, they would hurt you. Or worse, you need to know the truth. About me. About your mother. About why you were really left at St. Mary's Orphanage 28 years ago. Your mother didn't abandon you. She was silenced. And the people who did it are still out there. They're powerful. They're dangerous. And they're about to come for you. Because you're the last piece of evidence they can't erase. Your mother, Dr. Evelyn Davis, worked for my family's company, Ashford Biotech. She was developing a revolutionary drug that could have saved millions of lives. But she discovered something during her research. Something that my father and his partners couldn't allow to become public. The drug worked. It worked perfectly. But it was expensive to manufacture. And my father realized they could make 10 times more profit by releasing a modified version. One that worked just well enough to require lifelong treatment instead of curing patients completely. Your mother tried to blow the whistle. She went to the FDA, to journalists, to anyone who would listen. So they killed her, made it look like a car accident. And they took you, a newborn baby, and erased every record of your existence so no one would ever connect you to her. I was 5 years old when it happened. I didn't understand any of it at the time. But years later, when I took over my father's office, I found files, documents, proof of everything they did. I've been collecting evidence for 3 years, building a case, waiting for the right moment to expose them. But they found out. They know I have the files. And now they're hunting me. I'm leaving the country tonight. If I stay, I'm dead. But before I go, I needed you to know the truth. You deserve that much. There's a safety deposit box at First National Bank on Peachtree Street, box number 447. The key is taped to the back of this letter. Inside the box, you'll find copies of everything, all the documents, all the evidence, everything your mother tried to expose 28 years ago. Use it. Finish what she started. Bring them down. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you the way I should have, but you're stronger than you know, Lorraine. You survived 28 years of being invisible. Now it's time to make them see you. Trust no one, especially not the men in the black suits. Marcus Ashford. Lorraine's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the letter. She flipped it over, and there it was, a small silver key taped to the back with clear tape, a safety deposit box, evidence, proof of everything. This was it. This was what those men were hunting for. This was why they'd tried to kidnap her, interrogate her, kill her, because she was the only person who knew where Marcus Ashford had hidden the truth. Lorraine carefully peeled the key off the back of the letter and slipped it into her pocket. Then she folded the letter and tucked it into her bra, the safest place she could think of. She needed to get to that bank, first thing in the morning as soon as it opened. But first she needed to survive the night. Lorraine turned to leave the kitchen and froze. There was a sound, soft, distant, coming from the front of the restaurant. Footsteps. Someone was inside. Lorraine's blood turned to ice. She killed her phone's flashlight, plunging the kitchen into total darkness. She pressed herself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. The footsteps were getting closer, slow, methodical, like someone searching for something, or someone. A beam of light swept through the dining room, visible through the small window in the kitchen door. Lorraine ducked down behind a prep table, her heart slamming against her ribs. The footsteps stopped. The light went out. Silence. Lorraine waited, every muscle in her body tensed. Seconds stretched into minutes. Still nothing. Maybe they'd left. Maybe they'd given up. Then the kitchen door creaked open. Lorraine held her breath. Through the gap beneath the prep table, she could see a pair of black shoes. Expensive leather, polished to a shine. The shoes moved slowly across the kitchen floor, the person attached to them clearly searching for something. "I know you're in here, Ms. Davis." The voice was familiar, cold, clinical, devoid of emotion. The pale-eyed man from the car. "We tracked your phone's GPS. Very careless of you." Lorraine's stomach dropped. Her phone. Of course. How could she have been so stupid? "You've caused us quite a bit of trouble tonight," the man continued, his voice echoing in the empty kitchen. "But it's over now. Come out. Make this easy on yourself." Lorraine's mind raced. The back door was 30 feet away. If she could just get there. "There's nowhere to run," the man said, as if reading her thoughts. "My partner is outside covering the exit, and we've disabled the front entrance. You're trapped." He was right. She was trapped. Unless. Lorraine's eyes adjusted to the darkness. To her left, about 10 feet away, was the walk-in freezer. Its massive steel door was slightly ajar. The cleaning staff always left it open a crack because the latch sometimes stuck. It was a long shot. A crazy, desperate long shot. But it was the only shot she had. Lorraine took a deep breath. Then, in one swift movement, she grabbed a metal ladle from the prep table and hurled it across the kitchen. It clattered against the far wall, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The pale-eyed man spun toward the noise, his flashlight beam sweeping in that direction, and Lorraine ran. She sprinted toward the freezer, her feet barely making a sound on the rubber floor mats. She grabbed the freezer door and yanked it open, slipping inside just as the man's flashlight swung back toward her. "There!" Lorraine shoved the freezer door shut from the inside. The heavy steel door closed with a soft whoosh, and suddenly she was plunged into complete absolute darkness. And cold. God, it was cold. She felt along the wall until her fingers found what she was looking for, the emergency release handle on the inside of the door. It was a safety feature designed to prevent people from getting trapped inside. But she didn't pull it. Not yet. She pressed her ear against the cold metal door and listened. Footsteps approached. The door handle rattled. "Clever," the pale-eyed man said from the other side. "But you've just locked yourself in a tomb. That freezer is set to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll be hypothermic in 20 minutes. Dead in an hour." Lorraine's teeth were already starting to chatter. He was right. She couldn't stay in here. But she couldn't go out there either. Think. Her eyes had adjusted enough to make out vague shapes in the darkness. Boxes of frozen food stacked on metal shelves. Hanging meat wrapped in plastic. And in the corner, an air vent. Lorraine moved toward it, her breath coming out in visible puffs of white vapor. The vent was small, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, covered with a metal grate. She grabbed the grate and pulled. It didn't budge. The screws were rusted in place. Outside, she heard the man speaking on his phone. "She's in the walk-in freezer. No, let her freeze. We'll collect the body in an hour and search it for the key." The key. They knew about the safety deposit box. Lorraine pulled harder on the vent grate, panic giving her strength. One screw popped free, then another. The cold was seeping into her bones now. Her fingers were going numb. The third screw came loose, the fourth. The grate fell to the floor with a clatter. Lorraine didn't hesitate. She grabbed the edge of the vent opening and pulled herself up, her arms shaking with effort. The vent was barely wide enough for her body, the metal edges scraping against her shoulders. But she squeezed through inch by inch, pulling herself into the darkness of the ventilation shaft. Behind her, she heard the freezer door open. Where the hell? But Lorraine was already crawling through the vent shaft, her breath echoing in the confined space, moving toward an uncertain escape, and toward the truth her mother had died to protect. The ventilation shaft was a claustrophobic nightmare of metal and darkness. Lorraine crawled forward on her elbows, her body scraping against the cold steel walls, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps that echoed back at her from all directions. Behind her, she could hear shouting. The pale-eyed man had discovered the open vent. "She's in the ventilation system. Call building maintenance, get me a blueprint of these ducts." Lorraine kept moving, her arms burning with effort, her knees bruised and aching. The shaft branched in 3 directions ahead of her. She chose the middle path blindly, having no idea where any of them led. The metal beneath her hands was freezing cold, still carrying the chill from the walk-in freezer. Her wet clothes clung to her body, and she was shivering so violently her teeth were chattering. But she couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. The shaft began to angle upward. Lorraine's arms screamed in protest as she pulled herself up the incline, her feet slipping on the smooth metal surface. Sweat mixed with the rainwater in her hair, dripping into her eyes. After what felt like an eternity, she saw it. A faint rectangle of orange light ahead. Another vent grate, this one leading somewhere outside the freezer system. Lorraine crawled toward it, her body shaking with exhaustion and cold. When she reached the grate, she pressed her face against it and looked down. She was above the main dining room. 20 feet below, she could see the elegant tables, the white tablecloths, the crystal chandeliers reflecting the amber glow of the streetlights filtering through the windows. And she could see the pale-eyed man standing in the center of the room, his phone pressed to his ear, his face tilted upward, searching. He hadn't spotted her yet, but it was only a matter of time. Lorraine examined the grate. This one was held in place by 4 screws, just like the last one, but these screws looked newer, tighter. She tried to turn one with her numb fingers. It didn't budge. She needed a tool, something to pry with. Her hand went to her pocket and closed around the only thing she had, the safety deposit box key. It was small, barely 2 inches long, but the head of the key was flat and wide enough to maybe, just maybe, work as a makeshift screwdriver. Lorraine wedged the key into the screw head and twisted. Pain shot through her frozen fingers. The screw held firm. She tried again, putting all her weight behind it. The key bent slightly, but the screw turned. Just a fraction, but it turned. Below her, the pale-eyed man was speaking into his phone. "I need thermal imaging equipment. She's somewhere in these walls and she's going into hypothermia. Her body heat signature will show up like a beacon." Lorraine's heart sank. Thermal imaging. They would find her in minutes. She worked faster, ignoring the pain in her hands, ignoring the cold, ignoring everything except the screws. One came out, then the second, the third. The pale-eyed man's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his expression changed. He turned toward the kitchen, speaking urgently. "The thermal scanner is picking up a signature. North wall, 2nd floor. She's in the ventilation shaft above the private dining room." He was wrong. She was above the main dining room, not the private one. But that mistake was the only thing keeping her alive. Lorraine twisted out the 4th screw. The grate came loose in her hands. She caught it before it could fall and make noise, then carefully set it aside. The drop to the dining room floor was at least 20 feet, too far to jump without breaking something. But to her right, about 6 feet away, One of the crystal chandeliers hung suspended from the ceiling by a thick chain. If she could reach it, she could use it to climb down. It was insane, dangerous, probably impossible, but staying in the vent shaft meant certain death. Lorraine took a deep breath. Then she swung her legs out of the vent opening and dropped. For one terrifying second, she was falling through empty air. Then her hands closed around the chandelier's chain. The crystal fixture swayed violently, the individual pieces chiming against each other like bells. The pale-eyed man spun around. What was... His eyes locked on Lorraine hanging from the chandelier in the middle of the dining room. Time seemed to slow down. Lorraine saw him reach into his jacket, saw the gun emerge, saw him raise it, taking aim. She let go of the chain. She dropped the remaining 10 feet and hit the floor hard, her ankle twisting beneath her. Pain exploded up her leg, but adrenaline kept her moving. She rolled behind a table just as the first shot rang out. The bullet punched through a chair's leather backrest, missing her by inches. "You're only making this harder on yourself," the pale-eyed man shouted, advancing toward her. Lorraine grabbed the edge of the table and flipped it onto its side, creating a barrier. Another shot rang out, this one shattering a wine glass on the table's surface. Red wine dripped down like blood. She had to get out, had to reach the front door, but the pale-eyed man was between her and the exit, and her ankle was screaming in pain every time she put weight on it. Then Lorraine remembered something. The private dining rooms. Each one had its own separate entrance, a side door that opened onto the street, designed for VIP guests who wanted discretion. She was only 30 feet from the nearest private dining room entrance. Lorraine grabbed a wine bottle from the overturned table and hurled it at the chandelier. It struck the crystal with a deafening crash, sending the entire fixture swinging wildly. The pale-eyed man ducked, momentarily distracted. Lorraine ran. Her injured ankle nearly gave out with every step, but she forced herself forward, limping toward the private dining room. Behind her, she heard the man shouting into his radio. "North side! She's heading for the VIP exit!" The private dining room door was locked. Of course it was. Lorraine slammed her shoulder against it once, twice. The wood frame cracked but held. The pale-eyed man was 20 feet away now, his gun raised. "Stop," he ordered. "There's nowhere left to run." Lorraine looked him in the eye. Then she kicked the door with her good leg, putting every ounce of strength she had left into it. The frame splintered. The door flew open. She stumbled through just as another shot rang out, the bullet embedding itself in the door frame inches from her head. The VIP exit led to a narrow side street. Lorraine burst through the exterior door and found herself in a dark alley, the rain still falling in a steady drizzle. She ran, limping badly now, her ankle throbbing with every step. Behind her, she heard the VIP exit door crash open. The pale-eyed man was coming, but ahead, at the end of the alley, Lorraine saw salvation, a main street, traffic, people, witnesses. She forced her legs to move faster, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her vision starting to blur from exhaustion and pain. She burst out of the alley onto Peachtree Street just as a taxi rounded the corner. Lorraine threw herself in front of it, waving her arms desperately. The taxi screeched to a halt, the driver laying on the horn. "Lady, are you crazy?" Lorraine yanked open the back door and collapsed into the seat. "Drive, please, just drive." The driver, a middle-aged man with gray hair and worried eyes, stared at her in his rearview mirror. "You okay? You need a hospital?" "No hospital," Lorraine gasped. "Just drive, please." The driver hesitated, clearly debating whether to call the police. Then he saw something behind her, the pale-eyed man emerging from the alley, gun hidden but face dark with fury. "Buckle up," the driver said quietly, and hit the gas. The taxi merged into traffic, carrying Lorraine away from Belmont's, away from the men who wanted her dead, away from everything her life had been. The taxi driver didn't ask questions. Maybe he could sense that Lorraine needed silence, or maybe he was just grateful she wasn't bleeding on his upholstery. He drove through the rain-slicked streets of Atlanta while Lorraine sat in the back seat, her entire body trembling with cold and shock and the after-effects of adrenaline. Her ankle was swelling inside her shoe. Her hands were covered in cuts and bruises. Her clothes were soaked and filthy, but she was alive, and she still had the key. "Where to?" the driver finally asked, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror. Lorraine checked the clock on the taxi's dashboard. 4:47 a.m. First National Bank wouldn't open until 9:20 a.m. She needed somewhere safe to hide for the next 4 hours. Somewhere those men wouldn't think to look. 24-hour diner, she said. Somewhere busy. The driver nodded and took the next exit, heading toward the Waffle House on Ponce de Leon Avenue. It was a staple of Atlanta nightlife, always open, always crowded with a mix of late-night partiers, truck drivers, and insomniacs. The taxi pulled into the parking lot at 5:03 a.m. Lorraine counted out $13 from her purse, nearly all the cash she had left, and handed it to the driver. "Keep the change," she said, even though there was no change. The driver looked at the money, then at her face. "You in trouble?" Lorraine hesitated, then nodded. The driver reached into his glove compartment and pulled out a business card. "My brother-in-law is a lawyer. Criminal defense. If you need help." "Thank you," Lorraine said, taking the card even though she knew she couldn't use it. Regular lawyers couldn't help her with this. This was bigger than the law. She climbed out of the taxi and limped toward the Waffle House entrance. The familiar yellow sign glowed like a beacon in the pre-dawn darkness. Inside, the diner was exactly as she remembered from the few times she'd been able to afford to eat out. Bright fluorescent lights, worn vinyl booths, the smell of coffee and bacon grease. A waitress with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Sharon, looked up as Lorraine entered. "Honey, you look like you've been through hell," Sharon said, her southern accent thick and warm. "Sit anywhere you like. I'll get you some coffee." Lorraine chose a booth in the back corner where she could see both the entrance and the parking lot. She slid into the seat, her wet clothes squeaking against the vinyl, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Sharon brought coffee in a thick ceramic mug. "You want something to eat?" Lorraine looked at the menu, doing quick math in her head. She had $1.32 left. Not enough for food. "Just coffee is fine." Sharon studied her for a long moment. Then she glanced over her shoulder at the cook, a large black man with graying hair who was working the griddle. "Jerome, burn me a waffle and some bacon." "On the house." "Sharon," the manager started to protest. "I said on the house," Sharon repeated firmly. "Girl looks like she hasn't eaten in a week." Lorraine's eyes stung with sudden tears. She couldn't remember the last time someone had shown her kindness without expecting something in return. "Thank you," she whispered. While she waited for the food, Lorraine pulled out Marcus Ashford's letter and read it again, more carefully this time. Every word, every detail. Ashford Biotech, a revolutionary drug, modified to require lifelong treatment instead of curing patients. It was evil, pure, calculated evil, taking something that could save millions of lives and deliberately making it less effective just to maximize profits. And her mother, brilliant, brave Dr. Evelyn Davis, had tried to stop it, had tried to expose the truth, and they killed her for it. Lorraine stared at the photograph of her mother that the pale-eyed man had shown her. She had memorized every detail, the smile, the graduation cap, the intelligence burning in those eyes. Her mother. For 28 years, Lorraine had believed she was nobody, worthless, forgettable, the kind of person who could vanish and no one would notice. But she wasn't nobody. She was the daughter of Dr. Evelyn Davis, a woman brilliant enough to threaten one of the most powerful families in America, a woman brave enough to risk everything for the truth. Lorraine folded the letter carefully and tucked it back into her bra, next to the safety deposit key. The key felt warm against her skin, solid, real. Inside that safety deposit box was evidence, proof, everything her mother had died trying to reveal. And in 4 hours, Lorraine was going to walk into that bank and get it. Sharon brought the food, a waffle golden and crispy, bacon still sizzling, a side of hash browns. Lorraine ate slowly, savoring every bite, forcing herself to make it last. She had no idea when she'd get another meal. As dawn began to break outside, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Lorraine watched the parking lot. Every car that pulled in made her tense. Every person who walked past made her heart race. But the men in black suits didn't come. By 7:30 a.m., the morning rush had started, the Waffle House filled with construction workers, nurses ending their night shifts, and commuters grabbing breakfast before work. The noise and chaos provided cover. Just more bodies, more faces, making it harder for anyone to pick her out. At 8:45 a.m., Lorraine stood up. Her ankle was still swollen and painful, but she could walk on it. Barely. She limped to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror for the first time since the nightmare began. She looked like hell. Her hair was matted with dirt and cobwebs from the ventilation shaft. Her face was bruised, a cut above her left eyebrow crusted with dried blood. Her clothes were torn and filthy. She couldn't walk into a bank looking like this. They'd call security before she got through the door. Lorraine washed her face as best she could with hand soap and paper towels. She combed her fingers through her hair, pulling out debris. She tucked in her shirt and straightened her coat, trying to make herself look presentable. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. At 8:55 a.m., she left the Waffle House. First National Bank was only 4 blocks away. Lorraine walked slowly, scanning every face, every car, every shadow. The bank was a grand old building with marble columns and brass doors, the kind of place designed to radiate stability and trustworthiness. Lorraine climbed the steps, her heart pounding. The lobby was already busy with customers. Tellers stood behind bulletproof glass, counting money and processing transactions. Security guards stood near the entrance, watching everyone who came in. Lorraine approached the customer service desk where a young woman with perfect makeup and a bright smile greeted her. "Good morning, how can I help you today?" "Oh, I need to access a safety deposit box," Lorraine said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Box number 447. The woman's smile faltered slightly as she took in Lorraine's appearance. The bruises, the torn clothes, the exhaustion written across her face. "Of course, may I see your key and identification?" Lorraine handed over the key and her driver's license, her hands shaking slightly. The woman examined them both, then typed something into her computer. Her expression changed. Subtle, but Lorraine caught it. A flicker of concern, maybe even fear. "Is there a problem?" Lorraine asked. "Just one moment, please." The woman picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. Lorraine couldn't hear what she was saying, but her stomach was already twisting with dread. Something was wrong. A man in an expensive suit emerged from a back office. The bank manager, judging by his demeanor. He approached Lorraine with a professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Davis, I'm Richard Thornton, the branch manager. If you'll come with me to my office, we can discuss accessing your safety deposit box." "Why can't I just access it here?" Lorraine asked, her survival instincts screaming at her. "It's bank policy for high-security boxes," Thornton said smoothly. "Just a formality." Lorraine didn't believe him, but she didn't have a choice. The evidence was in that box, and if she walked away now, she'd never get another chance. She followed Thornton through a door marked "Employees Only" and down a carpeted hallway lined with abstract art. His office was at the end, large, elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. Thornton gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Lorraine remained standing. "I just want to access the safety deposit box." Thornton closed the door behind them. The click of the lock made Lorraine's skin crawl. "Ms. Davis," he said, his professional smile fading. "That safety deposit box was flagged in our system. We received instructions that if anyone attempted to access it, we were to detain them and make a phone call." Lorraine's blood turned to ice. "Who gave those instructions?" Thornton didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the phone on his desk, and Lorraine realized with absolute certainty that she had just walked into a trap. Lorraine's hand shot out and grabbed the phone before Thornton could pick it up. Their eyes met, his wide with surprise, hers burning with desperation and fury. "Don't," she said quietly. "Ms. Davis, I'm just following protocol. You're helping them cover up a murder." Lorraine's voice was steady now, cold. "My mother's murder. And if you make that call, you become an accessory." Thornton's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Lorraine pulled out Marcus Ashford's letter and slapped it on his desk. "Read it. All of it. Then decide if you want to be on the right side of history or the wrong one." Thornton stared at the letter like it was a live snake. His hand hovered over the phone, but something in Lorraine's eyes made him pause. He picked up the letter and began to read. Lorraine watched his expression change as he worked through the words. Confusion, disbelief, then horror. "This can't be real," he whispered. "It's real. And the evidence proving it is in that safety deposit box. Evidence that Ashford Biotech deliberately modified a life-saving drug to maximize profits at the cost of millions of lives. Evidence that they murdered my mother, Dr. Evelyn Davis, when she tried to expose them." Lorraine leaned forward, her hands gripping the edge of his desk. "And right now you get to decide. Are you going to help me bring them down, or are you going to help them bury the truth forever?" The silence stretched between them, broken only by the muted sounds of the bank lobby outside. Finally, Thornton set down the letter. His hands were shaking. "If I help you, I lose my job. Probably worse. If you don't help me, you'll have to live with the fact that you protected murderers." Lorraine held his gaze. "What's your daughter's name, Mr. Thornton?" He blinked, startled. "What?" "The picture on your desk. The little girl in the pink dress. What's her name?" Thornton glanced at the framed photograph. Emma. Her name is Emma. How old is she? 7. If Emma gets sick someday, cancer, diabetes, any of 100 diseases, wouldn't you want her to have access to the best possible treatment? The treatment that actually cures, not just manages symptoms? Lorraine's voice softened. That's what my mother died trying to give people. That's what Ashford Biotech took away from the world. Thornton closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. Decision. Resolve. The vault is downstairs, he said quietly. Follow me. The vault was a massive steel door set into a reinforced concrete wall, protected by multiple security systems. Thornton swiped his keycard, entered a code, and pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner. The heavy door swung open with a mechanical hum. Inside, the vault was lined with rows upon rows of safety deposit boxes, small metal doors with brass numbers, each one containing someone's most precious possessions. Box 4 of 47 was in the back corner, nearly hidden from view. Thornton inserted his master key into one lock. Lorraine inserted her key into the other. They turned them simultaneously. The metal door clicked open. Inside was a single envelope, thick, legal-sized, sealed with that same red wax bearing the lion crest. Lorraine pulled it out with trembling hands. It was heavier than she expected. She could feel the weight of papers inside, the density of secrets. "Take it and go," Thornton said quietly. "I'll tell them you overpowered me, that you had a weapon. It'll buy you time." Lorraine looked at him, this stranger who had just risked everything to help her. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You still have to get out of here alive." Thornton glanced at his watch. "The call I was supposed to make should have gone out 5 minutes ago. They'll know something's wrong. They're probably on their way." As if on cue, Lorraine heard a commotion from the lobby above, shouting, the sound of people running. "Is there another exit?" Lorraine asked urgently. "Service corridor, this way." Thornton led her through a narrow hallway lined with filing cabinets and old computer equipment. At the end was a fire exit door with a push bar. "This leads to the parking garage," Thornton said. "Take the stairs down to sub-level 2. There's a pedestrian exit that opens onto Marietta Street." Lorraine pushed the door open, then paused. "Mr. Thornton, when this goes public, when everything comes out, they'll know you helped me." He smiled sadly. "I know, but Emma will know her father did the right thing. That's worth more than any job." Lorraine nodded, then disappeared through the door. The stairwell was concrete and industrial, lit by harsh fluorescent tubes. Lorraine's footsteps echoed as she descended, her injured ankle protesting with every step. Behind her, she heard the fire exit door crash open. "She's in the stairwell, south side." Lorraine moved faster, half running, half falling down the stairs. She burst through the door marked sub-level 2 and found herself in a dimly lit parking garage. Concrete pillars cast long shadows. Cars sat silent in their spaces. The air smelled of exhaust and oil. The pedestrian exit Thornton mentioned was 50 feet away, a glass door with a glowing red exit sign above it. Lorraine ran. Behind her, the stairwell door exploded open. She risked a glance back and saw them. 3 men in black suits, moving with military precision. But they weren't the same men from before. These were younger, faster, more dangerous. Professional operatives, not just corporate enforcers. Lorraine reached the exit and slammed through it, emerging onto Marietta Street. Morning rush hour was in full swing. Cars honking, people hurrying to work, the organized chaos of downtown Atlanta. She dove into the crowd, using the mass of bodies as cover. Her mind raced. She had the evidence. She had proof of everything. But what was she supposed to do with it? Marcus Ashford's letter had said to expose them. But how? Go to the police? They were probably on Ashford's payroll. The media. They'd demand verification, authentication, time she didn't have. Then she remembered something. A name from years ago, from her time at the orphanage. Sister Margaret, the elderly nun who had run St. Mary's until she retired. Sister Margaret had always told the children, "If you're ever in trouble, real trouble, go to someone who has nothing to lose by helping you." And Lorraine knew exactly who that was. The offices of the Atlanta Tribune were housed in an old brick building on Edgewood Avenue, scheduled for demolition next year to make room for luxury condos. The newspaper itself was dying. Circulation down, staff laid off, barely hanging on in the age of digital media, which meant they had nothing to lose. Lorraine pushed through the glass doors and found herself in a shabby lobby with worn carpet and flickering lights. A receptionist looked up from her phone, surprised to see anyone walk in. "I need to speak to your investigative reporter," Lorraine said. "Right now." We don't really do investigative. Then who runs your exposés? Who breaks your big stories? The receptionist hesitated. That would be Mr. Chen, but he doesn't take walk-ins. Tell him I have evidence of corporate murder, pharmaceutical fraud, and a conspiracy that goes back 28 years. Tell him I have documents from Marcus Ashford himself. Lorraine leaned on the desk, her eyes fierce. And tell him if he doesn't see me in the next 5 minutes, I'm taking this story to the New York Times. The receptionist stared at her for a moment, then picked up the phone. 3 minutes later, Lorraine was sitting in a cramped office across from David Chen, a man in his late 50s with sharp eyes, graying hair, and the permanently skeptical expression of someone who'd heard every bullshit story ever told. You have 60 seconds, Chen said. Convince me. Lorraine placed the envelope on his desk and opened it. Inside were hundreds of pages of documents, laboratory reports, internal memos, financial records, email chains, and photographs. The evidence Marcus Ashford had been collecting for 3 years. She spread them across Chen's desk like cards in a poker game. Ashford Biotech developed a drug called Helix 9 in 1997. It was designed to cure a specific type of genetic disorder that affects approximately 2 million people worldwide. The drug worked. 100% cure rate in clinical trials. Chen picked up a lab report, scanning it. His expression shifted from skepticism to intense focus. But William Ashford, Marcus's father, realized something. Lorraine continued. If they released Helix 9 as a cure, they'd make a lot of money once. But if they modified it to only manage symptoms, patients would need treatment for life, billions of dollars over decades instead of millions once. So they modified their own drug to make it less effective? Chen's voice was tight with controlled anger. Yes, and when my mother, Dr. Evelyn Davis, one of their lead researchers, discovered what they were doing and threatened to go public, they killed her, made it look like a car accident. And they erased me, her newborn daughter, from all records so no one would ever connect me to her. Chen looked up sharply. You're Evelyn Davis's daughter? You knew her? I was a junior reporter back then. I covered her accident. Chen's jaw clenched. I always thought there was something wrong about it, the way it was reported, the way the police closed the case so quickly. But I couldn't prove anything. Now you can. Lorraine pointed to the documents. It's all here. Everything you need. Names, dates, evidence, testimony. Marcus Ashford documented everything before he disappeared. Chen was already sorting through papers, his reporter's instincts taking over. This is massive. This could bring down one of the most powerful families in the South. It could do more than that, Lorraine said quietly. It could force them to release the real version of Helix 9. The cure. It could save millions of lives. Chen looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the bruises and the exhaustion to the determination beneath. You understand what you're starting? Ashford will come after you with everything they have. Lawyers, investigators, character assassination. They'll destroy you. They already destroyed me, Lorraine said. 28 years ago when they took my mother. I've been invisible my whole life, Mr. Chen. Living in the shadows, cleaning up other people's messes, being nobody. She met his eyes. I'm done being invisible. Chen smiled. A fierce, predatory smile. Then let's make you famous. The story broke online at 3:47 p.m. that afternoon. Atlanta Tribune exclusive. Pharmaceutical giant Ashford Biotech accused of deliberately sabotaging life-saving drug. David Chen didn't write a simple article. He wrote a 5-part investigative series, complete with scanned documents, laboratory data, and timeline graphics. He published everything. Every page of evidence Marcus Ashford had collected. Every damning email, every falsified report. Within an hour, it had been picked up by the Associated Press. Within 2 hours, CNN was running it as breaking news. Within 3 hours, Ashford Biotech stock had dropped 40%. Lorraine watched it unfold from the Atlanta Tribune's office, sitting in a conference room with Chen and his small team of reporters. They had offered her coffee, food, a change of clothes from the lost and found box. She accepted all of it numbly, barely able to process what was happening. Her face was on the news, her mother's face. The story of Dr. Evelyn Davis and her daughter, separated by murder and reunited by truth. FBI just announced they're opening an investigation, one of the reporters called out, staring at her laptop. And the FDA is launching a formal inquiry into Helix 9. Justice Department too, another added. They're looking into potential RICO violations. Chen sat down beside Lorraine, his expression serious. You did it. You actually did it. Is it over? Lorraine asked quietly. "The legal battles are just beginning. This will take years to fully resolve, but the truth is out now. They can't bury it anymore." Lorraine nodded, feeling tears prick at her eyes for the first time since this nightmare began. She had survived. More than survived. She had won. A knock on the conference room door made everyone turn. One of the junior reporters poked his head in. There's someone here to see Lorraine Davis, says his name is Marcus Ashford." The room went silent. Lorraine stood up slowly, her heart pounding. Let him in. Marcus Ashford looked nothing like the arrogant millionaire who had walked into Belmont's the night before. He was wearing jeans and a plain black t-shirt, his hair disheveled, his face drawn with exhaustion. But his eyes, when they met Lorraine's, were filled with something she hadn't expected. Regret. "I saw the news," he said quietly. "I didn't think you'd actually do it. I didn't think anyone could. You gave me the tools," Lorraine said. "I just used them." Marcus took a step closer. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you that night. For what my family did to yours. For not being brave enough to fight them myself. You left me the evidence. That took courage." "No." Marcus shook his head. "Running away took cowardice. You're the brave one. You stood up to them. You finished what your mother started." Lorraine studied him for a long moment. This man, this stranger, had completely upended her life, had revealed truths that destroyed everything she thought she knew about herself. But he had also given her something infinitely more valuable: purpose. "What happens to you now?" she asked. "I don't know. I'll probably be arrested as part of the investigation. I was on the board of directors. I knew about the fraud for years before I did anything about it." Marcus looked down at his hands. "I deserve whatever's coming. You helped expose them in the end. That has to count for something. Maybe, but it doesn't change what I didn't do all those years." Marcus pulled something from his pocket. A flash drive. "This is everything else. The stuff I didn't put in the safety deposit box. Offshore accounts, shell companies, bribes to FDA officials. Give it to Chen. Make sure it all comes out." Lorraine took the flash drive. "Thank you." Marcus nodded, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Your mother would be proud of you. I never met her, but I read her research, her notes, her journals. She was brilliant, and she was brave, just like you." Then he was gone. 3 months later, the criminal trial of William Ashford and 7 other executives of Ashford Biotech dominated headlines for weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was damning. The verdict came back in record time. Guilty. On all counts. William Ashford was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. The company was dismantled, its assets seized, and the original formula for Helix 9, the real cure, was released to the public domain, allowing any pharmaceutical company to manufacture it without patents or restrictions. Within 6 months, the first patients were being cured. Within a year, the genetic disorder that had affected 2 million people worldwide was on its way to being eradicated. Marcus Ashford received a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation, 5 years, with the possibility of parole after 3. He spent his time in prison writing a memoir about corporate corruption and moral responsibility. The book became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to a foundation established in Dr. Evelyn Davis's name. The 2 men who had hunted Lorraine, the pale-eyed man and his partner, were identified as private security contractors hired by Ashford Biotech. They were arrested on charges of attempted kidnapping, assault, and conspiracy. Both were sentenced to 15 years. Richard Thornton, the bank manager who had helped Lorraine access the safety deposit box, lost his job. But he was immediately hired by a nonprofit organization dedicated to whistleblower protection, where he worked to help others find the courage to speak truth to power. And Lorraine Davis became the face of corporate accountability and pharmaceutical ethics reform. She testified before Congress. She gave speeches at universities. She appeared in documentaries about corporate corruption. But more importantly, she used the book deal money and the settlement from Ashford Biotech to establish the Dr. Evelyn Davis Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting scientific research that prioritized patients over profits. She also went back to school, earned her GED, then her bachelor's degree in biology. She was accepted into Emory University's graduate program, the same program her mother had completed 30 years earlier. On the day of her graduation, master's degree in biochemistry, top of her class, Lorraine stood in front of the same building where her mother had once stood in that faded photograph. She was wearing the same graduation cap and gown, the same bright smile, but she wasn't alone. David Chen was there, along with Richard Thornton and his daughter Emma. Sister Margaret from St. Mary's Orphanage had made the trip, now 93 years old but still sharp as ever. And scattered throughout the crowd were dozens of people whose lives had been saved by the real version of Helix 9. People who existed because Lorraine had refused to stay invisible. As Lorraine accepted her diploma, she thought about her mother, about the letter Marcus Ashford had left her, about that night in the rain when her entire life had changed. She had started that night as nobody, a cleaning lady, invisible, forgotten, living in the shadows. She had ended it as Dr. Lorraine Davis, scientist, advocate, survivor, her mother's daughter, and she was done being invisible. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Lorraine visited Westview Cemetery on the outskirts of Atlanta. It had taken 3 months of searching through old records, but she had finally found it, her mother's grave. It was a simple headstone, no elaborate monument, just a flat granite marker with the basic information. Dr. Evelyn Davis, 1969-1997, beloved scientist. Someone, probably William Ashford, had made sure the grave was as anonymous as possible. No mention of her brilliance, no acknowledgement of her courage, just a name and 2 dates. But Lorraine had changed that. The new headstone, custom carved from black marble, read, Dr. Evelyn Davis, 1969-1997, brilliant biochemist, brave whistleblower, loving mother. She fought for the truth and her daughter finished the fight. Lorraine knelt beside the grave and placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grass. She was quiet for a long time, watching the wind move through the trees, listening to the distant sounds of the city. I wish I could have known you, she said finally, her voice soft. I wish I could have heard your laugh, learned from your wisdom, felt your arms around me. But they took that from us. She touched the cool marble of the headstone. But they couldn't take everything. They couldn't take your legacy. They couldn't take your truth. Lorraine smiled through her tears. And they couldn't break your daughter. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh-cut grass. Somewhere in the distance, a bell was ringing. And Lorraine Davis, no longer invisible, no longer forgotten, stood up and walked back into the light. 5 years later, the conference hall at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, was packed with over 2,000 people. Scientists, medical professionals, patient advocates, and journalists from around the world. They had all come to witness the announcement of the Davis-Ashford Act, a comprehensive piece of legislation that would fundamentally change how pharmaceutical companies operated in the United States. Dr. Lorraine Davis stood backstage, adjusting her navy blazer, her hands surprisingly steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. She was 37 years old now, and the years had transformed her in ways she could never have imagined that rainy night in Atlanta. Her hair was styled professionally, her clothes were tailored and elegant, but more than her appearance, it was her presence that had changed. She no longer moved through the world trying to be invisible. She commanded attention now, not because she sought it, but because she had earned it. Dr. Davis, you're on in 2 minutes, a stage manager whispered, adjusting her microphone. Lorraine nodded, taking a deep breath. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see the crowd settling into their seats. On the stage, a panel of legislators sat behind a long table, flanked by American flags and banners bearing the NIH logo. And in the front row, she saw him, Marcus Ashford. He had been released from prison 8 months ago after serving 3.5 years. He looked older, thinner, the arrogance completely stripped away. But his eyes, when they met hers, held something new. Redemption, maybe, or at least the hope of it. They had stayed in contact over the years. At first, it had been just letters, his from prison, hers from graduate school. He had apologized again and again, trying to atone for his family's sins. She had resisted at first, her anger still burning hot. But gradually, through hundreds of pages of correspondence, she had come to understand something important. Marcus Ashford was not his father. He had made terrible choices, but he had also made the right choice when it mattered most. He had given her the tools to fight back, and that counted for something. Dr. Davis, it's time. Lorraine walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. The lights were blinding at first, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw the faces in the crowd. Some she recognized, many she didn't. All of them connected by a single thread. They had been affected by corporate greed in the pharmaceutical industry, and they were here to witness change. She approached the podium and the applause gradually died down. The silence that followed was expectant, electric. Thank you all for being here today, Lorraine began, her voice steady and clear. 5 years ago, I was a cleaning lady at an upscale restaurant in Atlanta. I was invisible, I was poor, I was nobody. She paused, letting the words sink in. And then I learned the truth about my mother's death, about corporate corruption that put profits over people, about a system so broken that a brilliant scientist could be murdered for trying to save lives and no one would even investigate. The crowd was utterly silent now, hanging on every word. That night changed my life, but more importantly, it revealed something fundamental about power. It only exists because we allow it to. The wealthy and powerful maintain their grip on society because the rest of us believe we're powerless to stop them. Lorraine's eyes swept across the audience. But we're not powerless. My mother proved that when she tried to expose Ashford Biotech. Marcus Ashford proved that when he gave me the evidence to finish what she started. Richard Thornton proved that when he risked his career to help me access that evidence. David Chen proved that when he published the truth despite enormous pressure to bury it. She gripped the edges of the podium. And today we prove it again. The Davis-Ashford Act will fundamentally change how pharmaceutical companies operate. It will require transparency in drug development. It will criminalize deliberate modification of treatments to extend profitability. It will protect whistleblowers who expose corporate malfeasance. And most importantly, it will put patients first, always first, above corporate profits. The applause began again, but Lorraine raised her hand, not finished yet. This legislation is named after two people. My mother, Dr. Evelyn Davis, who gave her life fighting for the truth, and Marcus Ashford, who chose redemption over legacy. One was a victim of corporate greed. The other was complicit in it but found the courage to make things right. She turned to look at Marcus in the front row. His eyes were glistening with tears. Both of them taught me the same lesson. It's never too late to do the right thing. It's never too late to speak truth to power. It's never too late to fight for justice. The crowd erupted into applause. People rose to their feet. A standing ovation that lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Lorraine stood at the podium, no longer the frightened woman running through rain-soaked streets but a force for change. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the NIH atrium. Champagne and hors d'oeuvres, networking and congratulations. Lorraine found herself surrounded by people wanting to shake her hand, take photos, share their own stories of pharmaceutical abuse. She was gracious with all of them, but her eyes kept drifting to the corner where Marcus stood alone, a glass of sparkling water in his hand, watching the celebration from a distance. Finally, when there was a break in the crowd, Lorraine walked over to him. "You came," she said. "I wouldn't have missed it." Marcus looked down at his glass. "Even though I'm probably the last person who deserves to be here, you're exactly where you should be," Lorraine said firmly. "This act bears your name because you earned it. You made terrible choices, but you also made the choice that mattered most." Marcus looked up at her and she saw the weight he still carried, the guilt, the regret, the knowledge that he could never fully atone for his family's sins. "I've spent 5 years thinking about that night," he said quietly. "About the letter I left you. About whether I should have done more, done it sooner, been braver earlier." "You can't change the past," Lorraine said. "None of us can. My mother can't come back. The years I spent believing I was worthless can't be undone. But we can change what comes next." "What comes next for you?" Marcus asked. Lorraine smiled. "I've been offered a position at Emory, running the new Center for Ethical Pharmaceutical Research. It's funded by the settlement money from Ashford Biotech. Ironic, isn't it? Your family's money being used to prevent what your family did." Marcus actually laughed, a sound she'd rarely heard from him. "My father would hate that, which means it's perfect." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the celebration around them. "I'm starting a consulting firm," Marcus said, "helping companies implement ethical practices, transparency measures, whistleblower protections, trying to prevent other families from becoming what mine was." "That's good work," Lorraine said sincerely. "It's the least I can do." Marcus hesitated, then added, "I was hoping, maybe we could work together sometimes, if you're willing." "I understand if you're not." "I'm willing," Lorraine interrupted. "On one condition. Anything. You stop punishing yourself. You've served your time. You've done the work of redemption. At some point you have to forgive yourself." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can." "Try," Lorraine said gently. "My mother would want that. She believed in second chances. That's why she tried to expose the truth instead of just walking away. She believed people could be better, do better, choose better." She placed her hand on his arm. You chose better, Marcus. Eventually, and that matters. As the sun set over Bethesda, Lorraine stood on the steps of the NIH building looking out at the city. Her phone buzzed with messages, congratulations from colleagues, interview requests from media outlets, invitations to speak at universities around the world. But the message that made her smile was from Richard Thornton. Emma got into medical school. She wants to specialize in genetic disorders. Says she wants to help people the way your mother tried to help people. We're so proud of her, and so grateful to you. Lorraine typed back, tell Emma I can't wait to work with her someday. The next generation of ethical scientists starts with people like her. She put her phone away and closed her eyes, feeling the warm evening breeze on her face. Somewhere in Atlanta, there was still a Waffle House, where a kind waitress named Sharon had given a desperate woman free food when she had nothing. Somewhere, there was a taxi driver who had driven her to safety without asking questions. Somewhere, there was a grave with a black marble headstone that finally told the truth about Dr. Evelyn Davis. And everywhere, in hospitals, clinics, and research laboratories around the world, people were being cured because Lorraine had refused to stay invisible. She had started as nobody. She had become somebody, and in the process, she had changed everything. Lorraine opened her eyes and walked down the steps, heading toward whatever came next. The future was uncertain, as it always was, but she was no longer afraid of it, because she had learned the most important lesson of all. One person, speaking truth to power, can change the world, even if that person started out cleaning tables in the shadows. Especially if that person started out cleaning tables in the shadows.